Hello everyone, great to be here once again, really great to be back. The season is 3 weeks old, so what better time to bring you my first weekend roundup of the season. I was on holiday for the first week obviously, but it's no excuse. But I caught COVID, so that's where I've been for a fortnight. It's been real rough. Anyway, we've not missed much. Let's dive in. Chelsea, Luton kicked us off on the Friday night game with a game that had kind of an FA Cup feel of a Premier League side versus a good Championship side that showed us what they can do in spells, but ultimately couldn't really lay a glove on their more illustrious opponents. What can you say? 3 games gone, a draw, a defeat and a win. I don't know what this really teaches us about Chelsea. I'm still scratching my head at times when I look at this team and the value that's out there for the amount of money they've spent. It seems crazy to me, and obviously there's a big expectation now around this side in terms of the minimum expectation. I guess this season is top 4, and you'd expect to be challenging, if not this year, next. That's a big ask for Pochettino under normal circumstances with all these players. You'd be talking about time to gel, and I watched Chelsea and I still kind of think that's what they need. The game, Sterling was fantastic. That's a real bonus for them that he looks to be in electric form at the minute. Best player on the pitch, and the real difference between the side, linking up well as well with Nicholas Jackson, who got his first goal. He looks like he could be a handful. He'll need to be, because there is no one else if he struggles in spite of all that money spent. But obviously dominant in the first half. In the second half, until that second goal went in, I thought they really struggled to control the game. And Luton had quite a bit of the play. They some nice build-up play, comfortable on the ball. Building up in wide areas. But I said that I thought they'd struggle this year, and that I didn't see them as having enough. That was the feeling on Friday. Look, I know teams will come up and they need a bit of time. Forest started poorly last year, didn't they? So did Bournemouth. Both stayed up relatively comfortably in the end. With Luton, though, look, organisation will get you so far. You have a mix of good Championship players and players capable at this level. Certainly the defensive areas, as I say, organisation will get you so far. But at the top end of the pitch, I feel like they need a little bit more. If I was honestly, I think they could do with dipping into the transfer market. I would worry about where the goals are going to come from. But they're only 2 games in, Luton, obviously with the cancellation, so we'll give them time. Chelsea, as I say, a work in progress. I'm not looking at this side thinking they're going to have an easy time of getting into the top 4. I really do think Pochettino has got his work cut out. They'll probably sign a couple more players between now and the deadline. Interesting to see how Chelsea get on. Really, really can't judge this team until kind of 10 games. It's a new team, isn't it? Again, Bournemouth 0, Spurs 2 in the second game of the weekend. A deserved victory for Spurs. And what's that? 7 points from the opening 9. A really good start to the season under Postecoglou. He's freshened that team up very well with bringing in these, some younger players, hungry players with a point to prove. Not, like Basuma struggled last year. Richarlison did okay at the weekend. He got himself in some good positions, but he looks like a player who needs a goal. Lacking in confidence. Maddison, on the other hand, was phenomenal. He's the big personality that's come in to replace Harry Kane. Obviously, it's not like for like, but at the moment, it almost is. He's had a fantastic influence so far. Obviously, 2 assists in the first game. He played well against Man United, and he was everywhere in the first half against Bournemouth. All action kind of performance. He does his work in the same area of the pitch as we're used to Harry Kane dropping into. He's always showing for the ball. He backs himself to be the player that will lead his team creatively. And I think they've at 45 million, in this market. I do think it's going to work out to be a great signing for Spurs. I think there's tougher times ahead. Look, overall, the quality in this team, in this squad, I I think they will struggle to finish particularly high up the table, to push for fourth. I don't think that's going to happen. Still question marks over the striker position. Even if they decide to go with Richarlison, he needs some confidence, but if something happens to him, there's no one else at the moment. So, maybe expect Spurs to do some more business. For Bournemouth, I spoke about the risk of of changing the manager from the kind of foundations that they have in the Premier League, which are minimal. And 1 point from the opening 3 games. Look, they're certainly easier on the eye. They were okay in parts on Saturday. They, a few half chances. I know they've signed players, Tyler Adams and Alex Scott. Obviously, they're waiting to come back. They'll need those players. But I don't know with Bournemouth. They'll definitely be down there. It's a risk embarking on this kind of project when you're Bournemouth, because it may take some time. At which point, what kind of position are you going to be in? Is this team good enough to then go on a run? I don't know. It's always that balancing act, isn't it? Of what's it going to give you going forward that you didn't have already, being a little bit more direct, offset against, potentially making it easier for teams to play against you. So we'll see with Bournemouth. They certainly need to start getting some points on the board soon. Brentford Palace, proper mid-table clash. Obviously, this finished 1-1. Two sides that I think will be fine. I think both will be happy with the point to a certain extent. I thought Brentford, a little bit toothless on the day. I know they've been navigating the loss of Tony quite well with Mbermo and Visser. Obviously, it was Sharda that got the goal at the weekend. Brilliant strike. They'll need him to chip in. But I don't know if the stats are right. I thought I counted another shot, but 1 shot on target. It's not ideal, but it's going to happen. A player like Tony would be a miss to most sides in the Premier League, never mind a team like Brentford. As I say, it's going to happen. I think what's impressive about Brentford is that, they were okay, and they're drawing games in the Premier League. They're always kind of a 7 out of 10 at home. So, as I say, I think they will be fine. I think you're looking at a mid-table side. Palace may be a little disappointed. That's the kind of game, where you're restricting your opposition away from home and you're having the share of the game that they did, that you're only coming away with a point. It's the kind of game that you think you could take all 3. In the end, maybe they were looking, the element of luck, scrappy goal later on in the game gets them a point. I know Elise is currently out injured, but Eze isn't scoring those goals from midfield like he was towards the back end of the season. Edouard is the striker that they've gone with at the start of the season. Good goal in his first game, good movement in the box, a real striker's finish, but I'm not convinced he's going to provide you 15 goals from that position. Maybe I'll be wrong. I think Palace are going to be very, very strong defensively this season. I think, maybe they don't need to be scoring an abundance of goals, but it was a concern last season with a very similar side. A real lean spell that led to Vieira losing his job. So, you worry that they won't want that to rear its head again. But I think Palace are going to be involved in quite a few of these low-scoring games. As I say, I think they will be very competitive, very tough to beat, very tough to break down. And if they can start finding, a few goals from here, there and everywhere, they will be fine. Arsenal, with their first drop points of the season, home to Fulham. Weird one with Arsenal. It should be 9. It should be 9 points. It's a game that they've dominated. What was it, 19, 20 shots? A stupid goal from a lack of concentration in the first minute, and then falling asleep at a corner when you're 2-1 up with a few minutes to go against 10 men. So they'll be disappointed, but make no mistake, that can happen early season. Some of the criticism I'm hearing of Arsenal, you think that it was, they'd won the treble, and Arteta is messing with something that doesn't need to be messed with. He is tinkering, but he's trying to bring this side closer to Manchester City. Obviously, they still no Gabriel. They went with Partey and Kivior in the wide areas, in the full-back positions. It's not quite working just yet, and obviously Havertz is coming in for a bit of stick. He's still finding his feet. He's spent a season playing up front, which is obviously not his position. He needs a bit of time to settle. I think Arsenal, as I say, it's a game they should have won. They dominated. Poor goals to concede, but I wouldn't worry at this stage. I think the tinkering is normal. Good sides don't stand still. So it's not something they need to overreact to. Vieira was a positive. Kind of a little bit of a forgotten man at times last year, but he gives them something different. A technically gifted player, completely different profile to Ødegaard. He's quicker, he can drop a shoulder, he'll beat a man. If they can get a tune out of him this season, in many ways it'll be like a new signing. Fulham, it's the second time they've picked up points on the road this season. Both time you have to say they've stolen their points, massively outplayed for large periods by Everton on the first weekend of the season. But they were second best for large parts of this game. But obviously they took the chances when they came, and it at the very least speaks to the character. Kind of never say die attitude. I think they've got a good manager. I like Marco Silva. He wears his heart on his sleeve. 3 yellow cards in 3 games. There's some good quality in that side, and I know there's some more to come. I think Os Campos has possibly arriving from Sevilla. That'd be a good signing. But they've signed well since they've come up, and in Jimenez, potentially a clever bit of business. For a side like Fulham, great selling Mitrovic for however much he's gone for. But when you're trying to replace a striker, when you're a club like Fulham, you maybe have to look into the Championship, maybe have to look abroad. You're still going to have to spend a lot of money, and there is an element of risk attached to it. Jimenez, 6 million? A player who's done it before, has a point to prove, probably stagnated at his old club, needed that move. I know there's been the injury, but he's a clever player. And if he can bag you 10, 12 goals and bring other players into the game, hold the ball up the way we know he can, that could be a really shrewd piece of business. One of the games of the weekend at Old Trafford, Man United Forest. Man United running out 3-2 winners in the end, but 2-0 down after 4 minutes. It's not good. I was a little bit disappointed with Forest, to be honest. Maybe it was a case of scoring too early in the game. They hadn't put 3 or 4 passes together by the time they find themselves 2-0 up. They're probably thinking we're going to have to ride out some early Man United pressure. Instead, the game plan's probably very different after 4 minutes. I do think they made it a bit easy for Man United. I think it was considering that at that point they had them on the ropes, and with what's gone before in the other 2 games, it's there was an air of panic around Old Trafford, and I thought they let Man United settle too easily. They sat in and kind of allowed it to become a break us down kind of game far too early. I know they had the chance on the break before half time. It doesn't hit their own man. They can go in 3-1 up, but generally you didn't really see any real purpose in their play until they were 3-2 down. They were always going to have, they're a big side, Forest. They certainly had the size advantage over Man United, and getting a few balls forward, they caused some problems and nearly forced an equaliser in the end. But from the position they were in, they'll probably be disappointed. I was surprised that they made a comment on the refereeing to the point where they were thinking of making a complaint, because I thought both decisions were pretty nailed on. I thought the red card, is Bruno going to get to the ball? It's one of them where you have to say, maybe, possibly he will. If you're ever uncertain, I think the benefit of the doubt needs to go to the striker, who's clearly been fouled, and that's the only reason we don't know whether he would have got there. And I think Worrell knew it was a red card. And with the penalty as well, I think it wasn't an ankle contact, it was a knee contact. And if you look at Danilo, I think it was his knee, as he puts it into Rashford, there's a real ricochet, and it's... I thought it was quite a clear decision. So, as I say, I was surprised that Forest wanted to complain. For Man United, they've just got to take the positives. Obviously, it's a poor start. There's questions over concentration. But a lot of what they did last season was based on keeping it really tight at the back and prevailing in low-scoring games. That game last season, 2-0 down so early on, I'm not sure they win that game. So... that's good that they've proved that to themselves, but certainly a long way to go with United. They seem a little undercooked for this point in the season. No secret that it seems to be messy again with transfers. You'd expect a few more players to come in, at least 2, I'd think, before the window shuts. Big game at the weekend. Obviously, it's very early to be to be saying that any team's in crisis. And I don't think that'll be the case, but Man United Arsenal you know what's going to happen. If Arsenal lose, then it just kind of amplifies this criticism that actually the changes that have been made so far with Arsenal have taken them backwards rather than forwards. And for Man United, lose that game, and it's I know you can always lose at the Emirates, but that's Tottenham, Arsenal, two teams in the top half of the table. Such a poor record last season, and it's 2 games, 2 defeats already. Are Manchester United progressing? Everton 0, Wolves 1. Billed as a bit of a 6-pointer, just because it's 2 sides that were 0 points, tipped to struggle. It's still very early. Wolves prevailing. That's 3 games, no points, no goals for Everton. It is a worry. They're in real trouble. Make no mistake about it. They've been okay in the home games, well beaten at Villa Park, but in the home games I thought they were unlucky in both. Against Fulham, much the better side. Probably unlucky with a bit of a poor referee. The referee isn't so quick to blow his whistle. He's probably being sent over to the screen to give Everton a goal. And against Wolves, certainly in the first half, some good chances. Danjuma threw on goal. I know he was flagged offside, but it looked possibly close on the replay. You've got to put these chances away. And it's the same old story for Everton. A lot resting on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I don't see the goals in that side without him. I know he's his face, hasn't he? So is he going to come back in and they're going to get some games out of him? You'd think they're going to need to get close to 30 games, 20 odd games out of him this season, because I do think he'll provide the goals with the way Everton play if he can get a run of games. But it's can you risk that? They went with Danjuma, Dobbin at the weekend. It's not enough. Can they sign someone? I don't know. I would have thought that bringing in reinforcements up top, I guess Danjuma, give him time. Look, it's a worry for Everton, but I think they are playing for the manager. The luck's got to turn at some point. At least we know where Everton are going to be fighting. No one's under any illusions. It's going to be the same season. For Wolves, it was probably quite important to react after getting well beaten at home against Brighton. A decent technical side, Wolves. They've got some good players in there with the likes of Cooney and Neto. Similar issues to Everton with, you wonder sometimes where the goals are going to come from. Good fit with the manager. I think he's got them. He's got them competing, and Gary O'Neill's got a chance to carve himself a reputation as a good Premier League manager inside his in the first 2 years of his managerial career. So I think it was the right meeting of manager and club at the right time, and I think it does give Wolves a bit of a chance. Look, Everton very wasteful. I thought they were the better team in the first half. Everton, as the game goes on, you start to grow in confidence, take a few more chances. Wolves absolutely grew into the game, and in the end, they steal a goal late on. It's a good away performance and a very, very important 3 points. West Ham probably giving us the result of the weekend, winning 3-1 at Brighton. It was a typical David Moyes performance, like 20% possession of the ball, doing the best work without it. Antonio bullying in the channels and through the middle, and showing good qualities on the counter attack. It's seven points for West Ham from the opening 9. 7 goals scored. More importantly, I thought Zuma and Ogbonna were excellent at the back. It was a really, really assured performance from West Ham. It'll be interesting to see where they go. Obviously, they've it looks like Kudus is signed now, a player that's been linked with bigger clubs than West Ham. Some other, there's been some other signings in there as well. Ward-Prowse, Alvarez will need a bit of time to settle. It was obviously a poor season last season. I don't think it will be enough to, with the way they've started now. I kind of get the impression that West Ham fans will be expecting them to have a decent season, push on into the top half of the table maybe. 20% possession is great when you're winning. They will need to develop that a bit. I would expect them to. With better players coming in, you would expect to see West Ham develop a little bit this season. But the early signs are really good. Some concern that maybe keeping David Moyes on was the wrong decision. But I'm glad they've stayed with him. A season like last season can always happen to a club like West Ham. He's won a European trophy, and I think if he wanted to go, he would have gone. So the fact that he's decided to stay, I think he wants to take West Ham back up the table. Let's not forget, it was only a couple of years ago that they were, had one of them seasons where you were talking about them maybe getting into the top four. So, yeah, really good start for them. For Brighton, just a bit of an off day. On another day, even conceding 3, they find a way to not lose that game. 80% possession, plenty of shots. What was it, like 25 shots on goal? I think with Brighton, just got to be careful, haven't they? The architects of their own downfall a little bit with the disappointing to give that first goal away, and the second one can happen. Great piece of counter-attacking. Third goal a bit soft as well. On these days where they're maybe not firing, you give yourself mountains to climb. Then, with how competitive it is up there this season, they're really going to struggle to meet the same standards, and they might be the team that slips further down. Sheffield United, Manchester City, almost giving us a bit of a shock. City was sloppy, running out 2-1 winners in the end. Sloppy by their own standards, but it was a completely dominant performance and a gulf in class. I think, if anything, it probably worked out quite well for City. It's early season, you're looking for... not that City need to show signs that they can win a title, but it's early on, it's just these little moments that build confidence, and it was such a champion's response. Doesn't matter who you're playing in the Premier League, to concede that goal from the mistake they did after being so dominant, to go right up the other end and score a goal. It is the stuff of champions this early on in the season, and I know it's early, but he doesn't seem to be tinkering, does he, too much, Pep, this season. The changes, in terms of Gvardiol and Kovacic coming in, doesn't look like it's going to upset things too much. The team actually seems really settled, which isn't always the case with Manchester City early season. Obviously, they're going to be the team to beat. How much of a chance are they going to give these other sides in the first half of the season before they do what they always do? For Sheffield, probably you'd have to be a little bit... You're in the Premier League now. You should probably be a little bit disappointed that... to get your equaliser and concede immediately. But it was a bit of a free hit. Positive is they stayed alive in the game, and they stayed alive to take their chance when it came. They worked it well, and it was a good finish. But massively outclassed on the day. 2-1 didn't tell the story of the game. Sheffield are short. I know that's 3 defeats now, isn't it? The big investments, Hammer and Archer, as confirmed, 2 players that have done the business very well in the Championship. Is that going to be enough? I'm not convinced. As I've said before, with Sheffield, with Luton, sides coming up that I just think are really lacking. They're a little bit undercooked. I wouldn't be surprised to see them dip in again in the transfer market, but certainly from an attacking perspective, it looks like they've made their signings nearly there, for those of you still with me. Burnley 1, Villa 3. Tough start for Burnley. City in the first game and an excellent Villa side in the second. And obviously going into this game, 1 game less sharpness than their opponents. And maybe it showed a little bit. That's twice now. They've gone behind early. That's something they're going to have to fix. Concentration from the off, giving themselves a harder task than need be. Burnley, one of the best sides I've seen at Championship level. I know there's been some changes. A few players have had to come in out of necessity, with loan players leaving the club. That'll take a little bit of time. It takes a bit of time anyway. So in fairness to all the promoted clubs, I know I've been a bit more scathing of Luton and Sheffield United, but Burnley, I do think have got a bit more about them. I was impressed with them in the second half. A good response after half-time, got their goal, played some really good stuff, put Villa under a lot of pressure and looked like they might force an equaliser until Villa killed them on the hour with a nice breakaway goal. So positives to take for them. It is a learning curve in the first few games of the season, but you have to learn fast. 0 points so far, and it only gets tougher for Burnley. Spurs at home in the next game, away at Forest, home to United, away at Newcastle, home to Chelsea. At the end of that, they could find themselves bringing up the rear of the table. So you need to learn fast, but I do think Burnley will be okay. As for Villa, excellent. I don't really know what happened on the first game of the season. It surprised me to see them go down to Newcastle in the way they did. They've responded with 2 very, very convincing wins. They pull you all over the place, Villa. It starts with Watkins, such a willing runner in the channels. He makes so much space in behind him. I like the three at the back. I thought Dino was excellent at the weekend, and obviously Matty Cash popping up with 2 goals, getting himself into the box. It's looking good for Villa. Diaby looks like he could be a hell of a signing, and it's not just the first 11 as well. You look at Villa's bench now. On the bench at the weekend, Traore, Bailey, Zanolo, Tielemans, players that can change games, players that can cover for injuries. Watkins is the one that if he was to get injured, you worry a little bit for Villa, in terms of a replacement for him. But let's assume he doesn't. Villa could be on for a really good season. Very exciting team to watch, very well organised, and I think they'll upset a few this year. Finally, Newcastle, Liverpool. Really, really good game of football. Funny one to draw conclusions from, really, because with regards to Newcastle, bigger picture, they shouldn't be too disappointed. And for Liverpool that have come away with a brilliant 2-1 win at the death, still a lot of questions hanging over that Liverpool team, and I remain unconvinced by them. I thought Newcastle were brilliant in the first half. From the first whistle, they probably should have been 2 goals up at half time, and even in the second half, they did let the game drift a little bit, and question marks over their game management, with substitutions and decision making at certain points in the game. That's what's done for them. They still had chances to score another goal. Look, they should have won the game, and worst case scenario, they should have drawn the game. They didn't manage it well, and they were sucker punched by Liverpool. Sucker punched by a team that stayed in there, saw an opportunity late on, and took it. For Liverpool, points wise, it's a great start to the season. They were well off it in the first half. Newcastle, by far and away the better team. Obviously, the red card, which I'll come on to in a second. And even in the second half, it took them a bit of time to get going. They didn't get themselves organised that quickly, playing with 10 men. It was only kind of the last 20 minutes that Liverpool saw an opportunity and came into the game. Look, there's clearly still problems there in terms of transfers. And I know they've brought Endo in, but I don't know if that's the kind of profile of player that they were looking for initially. Is there some business there to be done with a defensive midfielder? Trent was all over the place. I don't know what this experiment was. Talk of him moving into midfield. Saw a few games with that happening where, to all intents and purposes, he's still setting up as a right back. He's just taking a higher position when Liverpool are in possession. So, I'm not seeing anything so far to suggest that it's going to be, are we just going to get another season like last? Kanate injured again. Van Dijk, I think he could really do with a settled partnership. So yeah, for Liverpool, look, good start. They're a work in progress. I think maybe some movement to come in the transfer market for them. Darwin scoring 2 goals, a massive boost for him. If he's scoring goals and he's confident, that's huge, because I think he's a player that could still have quite a big impact for Liverpool. With regards to the decisions, I thought the red card was spot on. I don't really get what Carragher was talking about in the studio, that we don't know it's going to be a goal-scoring opportunity. Van Dijk is the last man, and he gets himself into an awful position where he tries to win the ball. He's not in a terrible position when it's played. He kind of does. He does a lot of Isaac's job for him in terms of getting his body in between Van Dijk and the ball by making a wrong movement at that point in time. He can't make a tackle without fouling the player, really. So he needs to back off. He doesn't. He makes the foul. I don't really see how you can argue with that decision. I thought it was quite a clear red card. With regards to Trent, poor refereeing. It must be so frustrating for players. And with this new directive, obviously he's thrown the ball back onto the pitch for his first yellow card. It is the clearest foul you'll ever see. He's pushed off the pitch by Gordon. You've got a referee looking at it, a linesman looking down the line. How they can't see that, I do not know. So in that moment, obviously there's some frustration for Trent, but also he's out of the game. You're just going to let Anthony Gordon take the throw in, exploit the space that Trent's left, and maybe Newcastle go and score a goal. In that moment, Trent's kind of shafted by the referee a little bit there, and then he gets the yellow card. Players are obviously going to have to become better at accepting wrong decisions this season. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but fucking hell, referees need to be better as well. It's still poor refereeing for the second decision. To me, that's as clear as day. Yellow card as you'll ever see. I know it's a little bit soft. Gordon goes down quite easy, but he's past him. He's gone. The burners are on. Gordon's past him. The arm across the chest is, we know what it's designed to do. It's a cynical arm across the chest. Maybe it's because of the earlier yellow, but it's not for referees to be balancing things out. I thought that was poor. Anyway, there we have it. Let me know what you think. I love to read your comments. Might even reply to one. Don't forget to subscribe. 1,000 subscribers. Thank you to everyone who has. Let's keep it going. I've got this dream when I quit my job. So, I'll see you in a bit.